Hello everyone, Freightliner Argosy 06. Got the adjustable tilt and telescopic column, shitload of chatter in it, as they all have. You can't bloody graze it. $3,000 for a new one. So worked out that they're pretty similar to a tail shaft yoke, so they've actually got a breather hole in the top of the telescopic part there. So what I've done is I've got a needle nose grease attachment, and then it's actually the sheath off a bit of wire I stripped and fits in the hole. Trying to squeeze a bit of grease in there, and I'll do that bit and show you what I'm going to do next. Alright, now I've put about 7 or 8 soap pumps of grease into there, which has got it at the moment pretty much. That grease was already there. Once before I tried to paint some in there with a paintbrush and it just didn't work. Anyway, this time, like I say, I found that hole there, so I'm going to get it in the top. This setup, like I said, is pretty similar to a tail shaft slip joint that slips in and out as your suspension goes up and down. But obvious difference is this has no grease nipple. Normally you'd have a grease nipple on the outside shaft, and a little trick that somebody showed me that was very handy back in the day was when you're greasing that slip joint on your tail shaft, you put your finger over that hole and you block that hole as hard as you can with your finger, and you pump your grease in there, and it helps get the grease to go back out into the spline rather than just straight out the hole. Anyway, then you let your airbags down and it all comes out. But anyway, what I'm going to do now is, it's going to be a bit hard to get all this on video, right, while I'm doing it. So what you've got to do now is basically simulate that same thing as what I was just saying when you grease your tail shaft. But put your finger over that hole, then press your button to let your telescopic column down, and hold your finger over that hole as hard as you can, and just very, very gently lower the telescope down, and that'll help force all of that grease that's stuck now between the top of the shaft and the cavity, because the steering column at the moment is extended out as high as it can go. All right, so I haven't filled it up because I don't want it to end up everywhere eventually once I do adjust the column down the track. So all I'm going to do now is block that hole with my finger, slowly push it down, and it's going to create a bit of a hydraulic effect and start forcing the grease in between the spline and the outer collar of the spline, and just give it something to stop that chatter. It's not badly worn or anything to the point where it needs replacing. It just needs a grease, which Freightliner never provided a way to bloody do. Cheers. Now, I don't know if you can hear this, but we'll try. Little pop there as I let my finger off the hole. And that has been forcing down through there. It's just sort of as far as you can get without really hurting your finger, unless you want to take that bracket off. But I've just been stopping there and then pushing it down a little bit further, and then reaching up from underneath with my finger again. But honestly, I've probably done this, like today, I've put 3 lots of grease in that hole. Probably a little bit more than what I would have expected, but it's really got down in there, and it is the difference already without even driving the truck down the road is absolutely amazing. It just straight away kind of isolates that whole metal to metal in that spline, simply because there's no grease in it. As I say, it's far from actually worn to the point it's microscopic, the movement, but it's just the chatter is very, very annoying. So now I can't feel any pressure against my finger. I'll take it back out. Let's see if I can excuse me, get my foot. And see if I can push it down. And let's see. I can just see the grease starting to, as I'm trying to push the column down. There you go. Got it down a little bit then. Yeah, grease is coming back up through the hole. So what you sort of want to try and avoid is as you're pushing it down, and you've just got to try and avoid that all coming back up out of the hole, because obviously it's going to do nothing. So you've got to be patient. You've got to put your finger over the hole and you've got to push down on it nice and gently. You'll feel it bubbling and popping and air bleeding out past your finger, because you just cannot hold the pressure enough. But eventually the grease is getting pushed by hydraulic effect in between the spline, the inner and outer spline, and it is just making it so much better. If anybody was to bite the bullet and pay the $3,000 and buy a new one of these columns, the first thing I'd recommend you to do is get as much grease into it still before installing it, and then maybe keep this as a bit of a periodic maintenance thing in mind, because this is the biggest failure of these things, simply because you can't grease them, and ridiculous amount of money to replace. Cheers.